Hello everyone and welcome back to a new showcase in World of Warcraft Awakening, this time around with a similar build to one that I think a lot of players that hear first from this whole classless system immediately think about, and that is some sort of WindFury into Titan script build, although we've refrained from getting Titan script, and the reason behind that is that the damage in WoW Awakening is already reduced by about 20%. That's like a general thing in the server they introduced a few weeks after launching it, because melee builds were just a bit too powerful, and additionally getting like another 20% damage reduction through the talent Titan script itself, that would add up to just a reduction that's way too big, and that's why we are refraining from going for this right now. And yeah, that's why we are here with like a two-hander into WindFury and a bunch of rogue talents, bunch of warrior talents, and yeah, that will be something I'm going to explain you today. And also I will have a short showcase on a few training dummies at the end of the video, with like a short rotation and the overall expectation you can have towards this build. And yeah, until then I will explain a few things, will showcase the talents, all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, then be my guest and let's jump right in. So the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about this whole WindFury kind of spec is that poisons would actually work great with this, also because you take a lot of talents from the rogue tree and a lot of synergy with bleeding poison effects. So that was my first thought. Unfortunately in WoW Awakening right now poisons don't exist. The vendors are bugged out. I guess they are still trying to get the mechanic right, because like they want to downscale this whole poison experience to the vanilla format. And of course in Wrath of the Lich King poisons worked a bit differently, like they were already just vendor items and you didn't have to like, well, produce them. But in vanilla it was that way, so I think it's because of that. And so unfortunately no poisons in this build, which is something I would have liked a lot actually. Another topic I was thinking about is, should I go for a special kind of weapon specialization? And the answer to that was, okay, since we are currently having a two-handed sword, I will at least put 1 or 2 points in the regarding talents, like for example the warrior talent right here, that allows you with a very minimal but at least with a chance to proc an extra swing. Same thing with the rogue talent in the combat tree, so I also put one into that. And for me it was a bit of a compromise, because I'm using a sword right now, but I actually didn't want to waste talent points for talents that are very specific and that only cater to you if you have a very specific kind of ability or weapon set. In this case though, since this is like the best weapon we have currently by far, and I can use a few ability resets if I want to, I thought okay, let's just go for that. And in the end I only still put 1 or 2 talent points into those kind of abilities, since I think that's enough. Another synergy I was thinking about was the whole kind of bleeding effect on enemy targets, because rogues benefit from this more like if they have poisons as well, which is not the case, but still rogue and warriors actually excel on this kind of effect. And that's why I went for trauma, which increased the bleed effect on the target and also improved rupture on the rogue talent. So we got rupture, we got also the deep wounds, stuff like that, well, gives the enemy a bleeding effect, and that increases bleeding effect damage. Also the hemorrhage of course, and what's really nice with that is also the hunger for blood, which increases our overall damage by 5% for 1 minute, because we have a bleeding effect on the enemy target. Another thing I wanted to take care of this time around is to utilize the resources, like all of them, mana, energy, rage, and I think I did a pretty good job this time around, although the mana kind of side is not as utilized I think, but energy is in complete demand. Also we use our rage very well, and for mana we have Storm Strike. I guess on that point you could have gone for something, well, that's even more mana consuming as well, because this does not quite utilize all our mana and we can keep it up very well. But I think I will do an extra segment about mistakes later on where I can go into stuff like that a bit more detailed. Alright, let's get into the actual talent showcase, stat allocation. I went with a mixed kind of build. In WoW Awakening right now you have different kind of armor sets, of course, and those influence the stats you can obtain, at least in a way that the stats also influence your attack power, crit, dodge, parry, all that kind of stuff. And if you are wearing very heavy armor, for example, like plate, then strength is a better attribute for you, since we have a lot of agility right now. That also increases the range attack power, which is a bit useless here, but of course also the melee attack power in a rogue sort of way, and also the crit. It's a bit of a mix we have going right now, but once I gather some nice gear and I want to go full plate on this character and more of a strength build, and that will become really important, since now our attack power is quite low. Like, there's actually the possibility to get this much higher, especially if you go full plate, go full strength, and choose the regarding talents for that as well, since there's a lot of stuff in the talent trees. I noticed this in an earlier video as well, that actually increases your strength by a lot. More talents that also increase the attack power, especially in comparison to those that increased range attack power or agility. So that's one thing to consider here, and that's why right now it's a bit mixed and leaves us a lot of room for improvement. Moving to the abilities and talents, as you can see, I went with a lot of buffs again, since the ability points are actually, well, a bit more prominent and a bit more versatile than the talent points. Like, you have to be really careful where you spend your talent points, and there's actually so much stuff I would like to get with the talent points. Ability points, since you also have to take in consideration like things like global cooldowns. Sometimes you really have some points left and you can use them to get abilities that actually improve your overall build and that improve your overall character. Stuff like buffs, of course, just abilities that you don't have to use in fight, don't consume valuable global cooldowns, and that are just great to buff you even before the fight starts. So you can take a quick look here what we've got, and keep in mind this time around again I went with a complete PvE build. This is like nothing for PvP, maybe like a surprise gank or something like that, but in general we have no stunts, we don't have anything that reduces damage we take. This is an all-out PvE build, and I think a pretty fun one at that. I also went with an imp again because, well, of the reasons I mentioned just now, and also because it gives a pretty nice health bonus to our team, maybe even like a nice buff for our tank if we like are going with a group for a raid or dungeon. And the damage the firebolt deals is actually not that bad. Of course it's nothing amazing, but for only 2 ability points I think the imp is the best pet you can get. If you don't want to spend ability points on soul drain and getting soul shards for like other demons that are arguably a bit better. The nice thing about the imp is that the firebolt actually still deals a good amount of damage, despite, like, take for example the Felguard we had like in an earlier build, which was a complete disaster just because the talents and the attributes on those kind of pets just don't scale, and the auto attacks don't deal any damage. But since the firebolt is like a fixed kind of ability with magical damage, this works actually quite okay, and so I think it's worth a pickup. If you're going for PvP, then always make sure, like if you at least have the imp, not to forget to also maybe get this nice talent right here, the Soul Link, reducing incoming damage by 20%. Totally amazing. I didn't go for it this time around. Again, we are not going for PvP here, but also pretty nice tank spec, so keep that in mind. Alright, jumping in with the first ability slash talent I will actually showcase in this whole character progression kind of sense is the Aspect of the Beast. I think regarding aspects, this is the best thing you can pick up as a melee hero, even though you don't have a companion, or like not a companion that goes melee, or like companions in general being bugged. This is a really strong ability overall. A flat 5% attack power increase. There's not much you can go wrong with here. I also went with Blink and Portal Mastery again. Just overall nice spells, even for PvE, like a Blink. You need to have some mobility, some, well, means of escaping sticky situations, of positioning yourself, so that's the reasoning behind that. And Portal Mastery, of course, for convenience sake, to get faster from A to B. We also went with a Cleanse again, and also the Divine Shield in the Paladin tree, just because, well, for some defensive purposes, if you get ganked maybe in the open world, to just half bubble out, that's always a nice thing. And I mean, Cleanse is just the most powerful purging spell in the game, because it just covers a lot of areas you need to get rid of maybe, and this maybe also takes some pressure from your healers if you are in a group and you have some time to, well, cleanse yourself of a disease effect or magic effect or even a poison effect, and that's something really nice to consider. And what we also went with is the Seal of Righteousness. This is just perfect for our melee build, since we have a lot of abilities that actually go all in, that use our attack cooldown, if that's like the right phrase to put it in. Like for example the Hemorrhage and also the Storm Strike. Like we attack with the weapon, and through that also the weapon buff gets well, on the target. So that's a pretty nice thing to pick up, I think, for just 2 ability points, and something you should consider getting. We also went with Crusade again. I think this is like for DPS kind of builds just a must-have. 3% flat damage increase plus 3% to certain enemies. It's just something you can't go wrong with. 3 talent points, and the nice thing about this, like, this affects everything. This is not just like ability specific. This is just something you can really, I think, get no matter what you are currently building, as long as it's DPS, of course. Alright, getting into the rogue kind of talent trees. Assassination would have been amazing actually if poisons would have worked. There were a lot of cool abilities that, well, give back some energy, for example, if a poison and bleed effect is going on, stuff like that. Unfortunately, not possible right now, might be something we'll pick up later. For now, in the assassination tree we only got Murder, which is another flat damage increase to all sources, 4% for 2 talent points, really worth picking up. And then of course also the Hunger for Blood, which is 2 ability points, 1 talent essence, yeah, for 5% damage increase, and it is actually rather easy to keep this up in a fight. So if you have a bleed effect, I think this is just a really solid spell to go for. Okay, Combat Rogue. This is actually a tree where we got a few talents from. If you are going for the Titan Grip build, and that's something I thought about as well, stuff like this is really awesome. Like increase also your offhand weapon damage by 10. I think in the enhancement talent tree there's also some sort of talent that is about the same. Just a short side note, like not for our build. I regretted not getting precision. This is really powerful, especially early on. It's hard to get on like weapons that increase your hit percentage, and this would have been one of those talents I kinda missed up getting, and there might be some talents that are worth neglecting for that, so keep in mind talents like those are actually pretty powerful. This also affects poisons, which is a bit useless, but just the flat hit is pretty nice to have. Then I covered this earlier with the sword specialization, so we get maybe a hit in here or there additionally, which is also nice for our WindFury, of course. And then we have weapon expertise, 2 points for 4 expertise, which I think is really worth it. Like, those are the talents I mean. This one here as well, hit, expertise, really nice stuff, and something, at least in my opinion, is very worth picking up. Then we also went for Vitality, which increases our regen of the energy. And yeah, just a really solid spell if you are going for some sort of rogue build, for some build that requires you to use your Hemorrhage, Sinister Strike, stuff like that, then just pick that up. Really powerful stuff in my opinion, and nothing you can really go wrong with if you use a lot of energy, that is. I mean, even for PvP builds it's quite nice, since you can just use Sprint a bit more often or longer, so solid stuff. There were a few things I thought about also getting like the Adrenaline Rush to even increase our damage output every 3 minutes by a ton. Really powerful build and ability overall, and that's also something that might have been worth to pick up actually, and I kinda missed out on getting because I just noticed too late. Again, there are a lot of good talents you can get for this build, and there's also some argument in like what to maybe neglect and what to get, so feel free to play a bit around with it. We also went with surprise attacks, just 1 talent point, which increases your damage in Hemorrhage by 10, amazing stuff, and also your finishing moves can't be dodged any longer, which is really good, and for only 1 talent point, keep that in mind. That's why we went for it, and it's perfect for our Rupture, which is our finishing move in this case, and yeah, that's that. In the Sub-Rogue talent tree, we actually went with Serrated Blades, which ignores the enemy's armor by about 9%, which is pretty awesome, and also increases the damage our Rupture deals by another 30%, so perfect for this build in my opinion, and something you really should pick up, and also something that introduces another theme of this build, that is like armor penetration and, well, ignoring the enemy's armor. We have this going already with the Battle Stance, giving us 10% armor penetration, then we have this talent, and I think down the road we also will encounter another one that reduces or helps us ignoring the enemy's armor. Same thing with the Fairy Fire, just something you can use at the start of the fight. Also nice for PvP, I guess, if you are against rogues, but well, stealth I should say, not rogues. So yeah, that's something like this talent is perfect for the things we have planned. Then I also went with Hemorrhage, pretty much the better Sinister Strike. You can think about like skipping Sinister Strike completely if you go for Hemorrhage. Just a better spell, costs less energy, and the thing about Sinister Strike, this is only maybe better if you go for some talents that also increase the damage into Sinister Strike. So almost never. So keep that in mind. Those are pretty much 2 wasted ability essences, but again, those are not as valuable, and that's why it's not that big of a deal. But if you go for Hemorrhage, then just skip Sinister Strike. Then we went with Sinister Cowling. They nerfed this a bit, I think. Now it's a 10% agility increase, which is still good. And I also like the additional damage in Hemorrhage by 10%. So perfect kind of ability talent to pick up for our build. And that's why we went with it. Alright, the Enhancement Charm and Thundering Strikes, 5% increase for crit. So for me also some sort of must-have, to be honest, if you go for some mix of ability, attack, kind of melee build. Also for ranged it's quite amazing, so just a really good and solid talent there. Then we went with Storm Strike. This is one where you could argue that, well, maybe there are even better things to go for, or this is like the talent that makes Titan's Grip worth to some extent picking up. Not for me though, like in my opinion I think I'm still fine with only one of those two-handed weapons because of the damage reduction otherwise. But yeah, I think Storm Strike, it's okay, but in the end I think I actually could have, well, gone without it, to be honest. But still very strong talent if you can make it work. And if you go, for example, maybe even a dagger build with Mutilate and Storm Strike, because it also increases the nature damage, and once poisons are a thing, then I really could imagine this, like there's some sort of Storm Strike Mutilate kind of synergy, and well, let's see if that ever becomes a thing. Pretty solid talent for that, I would say. Moving on to the Arms Warrior, probably the build where we got most of the abilities from. I already covered some of those earlier. Also with Band of the Impale here, increasing even the critical damage by more points, which is pretty nice since we have about 30% when we are buffed up. Also with the Strength of Arms, again, increase in overall stats, just really solid ability, talent I mean, and another expertise increase. And here's, like, this is one of the things I was, well, just talking really quickly about the total strength increase. There are a lot of talents that actually increase the overall strength, and I think like later on in another video maybe I will go and try to get this going, like go for an all-out strength and attack power build, because there are really a lot of good talents that stack up with each other. But for now we don't have the, well, stat pool to do this, since a lot of our stuff is agility. But I think I digress and I think I repeat myself, so let's just leave it there. Then we have Blood Frenzy, perfect for our build. Also really nice raiding and dungeon wise, since this is like a debuff that is good for all of our, well, members, since it's a debuff on the enemy that increases the damage he takes by 4%, and also our attack speed by 2% increased. Really solid stuff. Endless Rage, also rather self-explanatory, just being able to spam our Bloodthirst a bit more often, or our Execute when a tick procs. I will show you what I mean with this later. Really solid stuff, and for me one of the must-have abilities. Then we have Sudden Death. This is the one I was just talking about. Like, from time to time we can actually use our Execute even without the target being below 20%, so also very strong talent, I think. And keep in mind, only one talent point invested into this and it still procs quite often, so thumbs up for this talent as well. Alright, Furry Warrior, another talent here, by the way, Cruelty. Another critical strike increase percentage wise. Take that with you if you can, if you have the talents left. Just very solid stuff. I just couldn't seem to find like remaining talent points for that one, but it's also pretty good talent overall, so just a short mention of that. Death Wish, really nice for burst, 20% damage increase, amazing stuff. Keep in mind this is only physical damage, so sorry for the ones under you that were like, oh yeah, Pyroblast instant with Death Wish. No, this only applies to melee characters and physical kind of damage, so yeah, for that, amazing talent. I think really nice to get some burst. It's 30 seconds. This is, I think, very strong. Like if heroism is a thing, or yeah, bloodlust, then like in the end phase of any fight, this is amazing. In the burst phase of fights against bosses as well, of course. Then we have Precision. This is the one I kinda missed on the rope tree, but here I got it. It's only a 3-point talent, and that's why, well, we only have 3 in here, so at least we didn't miss out on that one. One of those talents again where I think they are really nice to pick up. And Shredding Blows, this is the thing I was talking about earlier with the whole armor penetration build we are going here. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory as well. Decreasing or increasing your armor pen by 6%. It can even go up to 9%. I only have 2 or 3 in here, and very solid stuff in my opinion. Last but not least is next to last is Bloodthirst. We had to decide, okay, are we going for Mortal Strike, are we going for Bloodthirst, like in regards of how to utilize our rage, and I went with Bloodthirst in the end. Mortal Strike might be also an okay choice for me. I think Bloodthirst is just the better way to go, only 4-second cooldown. After spamming our Hemorrhage, we pretty much always are busy also keeping the Blood Fist going, and just a nice flat damage kind of ability, and also heals you a bit, which never hurts, I guess. Then we went also with Rampage, really nice also for your raid. They will thank you. 5% crit increase for you and your members, so what's not to love? Alright, I think the last talent is in here, and that is the Shockwave. I just thought to myself, this is such a powerful talent overall, like does a lot of damage, only 15 rage, and even stuns, which is PvE wise, like against boss fights and such, not like the best thing, but I mean, in other scenarios, also if you are farming or maybe have to get rid of some annoying PvP player and have to stun him really quick, then I think Shockwave is just a really solid talent, and you can even, well, get it into your rotation if you want, so really good stuff. And of course also the Vitality, same thing I showed you earlier, just overall increase in all kinds of stats, very valuable in my opinion, and for every melee player something you should consider to get. Okay, before we start with the rotation, just a few things I would like to point out, maybe also some mistakes. For example, this one right here, Judgment of Wisdom, not really needed to be honest, just increases our global cooldown rotation, and we don't really have a mana issue, so maybe just refrain from getting this, or go for something else, maybe one that gives you some health back. Then the Storm Strike, I kinda talked about this a bit earlier, not really the best spell, and overall I should have gone for more mana dependent spells, for more, maybe even, well, spell damage, something instant, but I always was afraid that our global cooldown would be too high, because we already have some issues, like getting everything, using everything of our melee attacks, so, well, the Storm Strike, it's okay, but maybe something you should think about if you want to get it for yourself. Then we also have the Berserker Rage. This is actually not that bad, also not in boss fights. A lot of bosses, they like to fear, they like to stun, and this makes you immune against it. So I think it's just a really good ability to, well, increase your DPS in those kind of phases and to keep going even if you are stunned or if you would be feared. So yeah, solid stuff there, but something you can think about maybe not getting. Alright, here we are, just showing you quick the rotation I like to go for. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert right now at this build, I still have a lot of training to do with it, but just the overall kind of idea I have, and well, maybe show you how it works, what kind of DPS you can expect. I think this DPS will increase by a lot though once we hit the hit cap, and also once we get some proper gear and maybe even a better weapon. So keep that in mind. Still, from my experience, like from my point of view, a really fun build to play. There's a lot of things you have to take care of, and it's a very interactive, at least in my experience. So we start off by using our Fairy Fire for that extra 5% damage reduction, and then we pretty much just spam our Hemorrhage for the first few seconds. Also keep in mind to maybe get a Battle Shard out, and now the actual rotation starts. So keep your Rupture up all the time, try to go for Hunger for Blood, like try to keep it up at all cost, and yeah, like a bit butchered the rotation right now because I try to explain things with it, but yeah, that's basically it. Also try to get a Bloodthirst in, maybe a Storm Strike here and there. So this is like, it's actually, it's really not that easy to take care of all the stuff that's happening. Like once you are in the fight and also have to take care of in-game boss mechanics, of course, this is actually not as easy as it might seem. So another thing I like to go for sometimes, but what might get fixed rather soon, is after like my Rupture debuff is going on, to go for Overpower, since this consumes like a combination point. Also, of course, don't forget to use a Shockwave here and there. It does a lot of damage for really, well, okay cost. And you have to keep in mind to also get an execute in here and there. So I'm really not doing my best right now in terms of DPS. Usually this is around 550 if you play it correctly. I'm just sorry because, well, I'm trying to explain things here and that makes things a bit hard for me to actually concentrate on the proper rotation. But yeah, well, the things you have to keep in mind really is to keep up your rupture all the time, to keep up your hunger for blood, and of course to use your death wish if it's necessary. Or like at good points. So now without talking, let's go for maybe like one proper rotation again. Let's reset the data and let's just try to do this again. Alright, that should be enough for now, sorry. I also forgot to use my imp there for the first few minutes. It's actually quite possible to get around 540, maybe to even 600 if you play it really properly. And that's quite decent for the server right now, for the state of the server. It's not the best, and I think like caster mobs are still on a huge, not caster mobs, like caster builds. Spell damage power, especially with like recent class masking fixes, are just way above. Like if you go for spell power kind of builds, they tend to deal a lot more damage, so keep that in mind. But this is a pretty fun build, I think, and one that has room for improvement, not only like in the terms of getting better equipment and getting the hit cap and all, but also maybe in the terms of swapping a few talents out here and there for more optimized ones. But I think it really has potential, and I hope you enjoyed this short showcase. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. I will try to answer you as best as possible. And yeah, I hope to see you in game soon. I hope the open beta will start in about a month or even earlier. I really hope they just release it tomorrow, but I think it will take them maybe 3-4 more weeks. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a rating as well, would be much appreciated. And yeah, I hope to see you on the next showcase. Until then, take care and bye.